back to what we were talking about when we were talking about like motivation and burnout. And you alluded to it a little bit when you were talking about how interventional radiology is one of the more competitive specialties to match into. It sounds like there was a lot of pressure associated with that.
Yeah, as with all things that are pressure, 90% of that pressure is self-imposed pressure. Even if it's extrinsic pressure, I have colleagues who like your parents really want them to become cardiologists or something. I'm lucky I come from a family with no doctors, so they have no clue even what interventional radiology is. No one will judge you differently, depending on whatever your path takes you. And so I think it's more of like realizing that it's you pressuring yourself. But the big thing is that you need to recognize that the pressure to get into a certain specialty is 99% internal.
Welcome back to Pursuit of Practice. Whether you're pre-med just starting to dip your toes into the world of medicine or a med student already deep in the grind, this episode is for you. We all know that med school is demanding, studying for exams, keeping up with rotations, and trying to maintain some semblance of a personal life. But what if you can navigate it all without feeling constantly overwhelmed? The truth is, I don't really know if that's possible, but we're going to talk about that today. Today, we are diving into time management strategies that can help you not only survive, but thrive in this fast-paced journey and adapt to whenever you feel overwhelmed. For our pre-med listeners, we'll cover practical advice for building a solid foundation before medical school so you're ready to take on the challenges ahead. And for those already in medical school, we will dig in deep into techniques that really balance your academic workload, self-care, and personal relationships without burning out. Today, I am joined by Camden MacDowell. He's an interventional radiology resident who's been through it all. Camden grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, and went to Emory University in Georgia for undergrad before completing his PhD and postdoc fellowship in neuroscience at Princeton University. He then earned the title of being a double doctor after getting an MD from Rutgers. While being a resident, because he clearly mastered the time management game, he has been working at Blueprint for over 4 years and has been widely engaged in medical education programming and served as a senior tutor for the USMLE STEP exams. He can be described as someone who is disciplined, clever, compassionate, and on top of everything else he's doing, he is a dedicated father. He values mentoring learners as they embark on their journey to becoming a doctor and has a wealth of advice to share, from structuring your day to staying mentally healthy during this intense journey. And so whether you're planning ahead or are knee-deep in the trenches of medical school, stay tuned to hear how you can master time management and set yourself up for success, both academically and personally. Camden, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Amazing. So let's just dive right into it. So first, I kind of want to talk about personal experiences and challenges. Can you describe, to the best of your ability, what your first few weeks of medical school was like and how you kind of handled that workload?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think that at this point, that was over 10 years ago. The MD PhD does take a while, but it was 10 years ago. It was before COVID. It was before kind of a lot of changes happened in the system. But I think a lot of the things that I learned right off the bat still ring true for me, at least to this day. And, they use the proverb like, you're drinking from a fire hose when you first started off medical school. It was totally different than college. I had to relearn how I learned, basically. Yeah. And one of the biggest parts of that was time management and thinking about how to approach this infinite amount of knowledge I need to know in a way that was efficient, effective, and also preserved my own mental health.
Right. And I know I've heard the proverb, if you will, of drinking from a fire hose. And truthfully, I think it's accurate. And I feel like the first couple of weeks can be really overwhelming for a lot of people. And I'm curious for you, was there any surprises that you experienced during those first few weeks?
Yeah, I think the surprise for me was just, I'm going to extend it out for like the first 2 months, because the first couple of weeks are orientation. They're taking it easy on you a little bit. And then they're like, oh, hey, like pedal to the metal. Here's all this information that you've not thought about the Krebs cycle and all this other stuff, since your, second year biology course in college. And that's when, what sticks out to me in hindsight is it was a really nice taste of medicine is different, and it's not college anymore. You've got to study differently, and you have to figure out time management skills, frankly. I know that's the title of the podcast, but frankly, you have to figure out the time management to be able to internalize this knowledge in an effective, efficient way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like it's a learning curve for sure. And I think something that I think you're speaking to is that not every day is going to be a day where you've mastered it, but it seems like it is a journey to kind of figure out how exactly to do that.
There's a quote that you just triggered in my mind by saying that. It's from Dr. Glockum Flockum, the TikTok personality.
Yeah.
And he has a skit that is it applies to residents, but I think it applies just as applicably to first year med students and those starting clerkships. And it's a little crass, but basically every day is like, did I suck today? And usually the answer is yes. But did I suck less than yesterday? And that's the key. Every day you want to leave the hospital being like, I wasn't the best, but I did better than yesterday. And I think that's a good thing to kind of instill in you, particularly as someone who's pretty early on in residency.
Right. No, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I feel like I don't know that quote, but I love Dr. Glaucom Flecken. If he ever listens to this, please join our show. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I guess for you, because at this point you've gone through a ton of school and you're going through another transition period because you're in residency now. Looking back, what were some of the mistakes that you made early on when trying to balance studies and life? Was there anything that you feel like you wish you had done differently?
Yes, there was something I learned very early on. When you enter med school, you're surrounded by these very smart people who all had very different experiences than you. Maybe they went to, premier institutions or not premier institutions. Who knows? They all have their own study habits. But one mistake I made that I think a lot of folks make is, comparing yourself to your peers.
Right.
Particularly when it comes to time management. And like, oh, they're studying all day, every day. Geez, like, how do I keep up? How do I match that energy? And particularly speaking to someone who at that point was, already married and was thinking about starting a family, it's like, how do I compete, for lack of a better term, even though it wasn't a competitive environment?
Yeah.
What I realized was, and I think one of the best things in the early years of med school is I treated it like a job. I worked from, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., but once I was done, I was done. And creating those very firm delineations was one of the things I learned. I think I learned it about 2 months into med school, and I think it made a big difference in my productivity throughout, particularly those first couple of years.
Got it. So I guess to dig a little bit deeper into that point, because I feel like I've heard some people do that. And the classmates of mine who had families definitely cited that they were doing that. I'm curious, what did work look like during that 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. period? And was that work kind of similar over the years, or did it kind of adapt as your stage in medical school changed?
Definitely. I'm going to get to the second part of that first, actually, because I think this is what makes time management so dang hard for people in the medical field, is that our reality changes 10 times between M1 and the end of residency. And then you start being a physician, an actual attending. And the demands on your time are going to vary completely. The ability of you to structure your own time varies wildly. I know you're at the tail end of clerkships right now, and you can speak to this very well, and I can speak to in residencies I don't know when I'm getting home. I'm getting home sometime today, or maybe not. And so trying to kind of navigate around that can be challenging, but at the same time, I think is why it's important to build skill sets early on when it comes to time management. So day to day is, for me, I've always tried to prioritize the things that I care most about intellectually early in the morning.
Okay.
So I think it's important, figure out when you work best. For me, I work best early. By the time it hits 5 o'clock, my brain starts fizzling out. I'm not going to be paying that much attention anymore. So I try to always front load, kind of the goal that I had. And typically these were midterm goals. What I mean by that was shelf exam or, an abstract for a conference, not day-to-day goals, but my short kind of midterm goals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then focus on the day-to-day. This is listening, if you're M1, M2, listening to lectures, catching up on your notes, doing flashcards, completing practice questions. That was kind of the middle chunk of the day. And then the latter part of the day, when I start to kind of deteriorate in my very precise thinking, I focused on my long-term goals. So this is stuff like applying to residency. So this is being part of student interest groups and dealing with all those emails. This is part of kind of, pursuing my related but outside interests, public service, whatnot. Can I save that for the end of the day? And so throughout the day, I simultaneously tried to tackle like day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year goals.
Yes. No, I appreciate that because I think something about it's funny when people see the episode title time management, it's easy to just think it's about finishing things on time, but the truth is that it's not about that, right? And I think what you're saying kind of really echoes that. It's not just about being able to, have all the material covered before your exam and be able to meet your requirements. It's about being able to do that, but also go above and beyond and accomplish the other things that are required. Because I think something that's becoming more common in undergrad and in medical school studies is having other things that you have to be doing in addition to school, kind of all the time.
Yes, you hit the nail right on the head there. I totally agree. And every year when I look at new applicants, I was on the admissions board for a med school, and every year I looked at new applicants, I'm like, guys, you're doing so much. Like, oh my goodness. Like, it's incredible what folks were doing. I was like, how did you manage that in college? But congrats to them. And I think it comes down to that sort of time management. And even more than time management, the term I like to use is time prioritization.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
So, you've however many minutes in the day. I actually don't quite know that, but you have to, like, when I make my to-do list, and I always recommend this to those that I mentor as well. When you make your to-do list, try to prioritize it in some way, shape, or form. One way to prioritize it, like I mentioned earlier, is I actually have a Word document that is like short, long, and day-to-day goals, and then on top of that, like life goals, like home stuff. And on the short, middle, and long term, I try to prioritize it by what, in that quarter. I kind of do this every 3 months. I reprioritize what are my actual goals during that time. So to give you an example, a big part of my life has been research, and a big part of my, ideas of getting into residency, and a lot of that focused on research. And so working on my paper, even when I was in my clerkship years, my day-to-day was all focused on clerkship. My month-to-month was all focused on shelf exams. But my long-term list of priorities was focused on publishing these papers, continuing to work on my research. So that hour and a half I try to kind of like budget every day was focused on that number one. And then only once I finished that could I move to the next one and the next one and the next one.
That makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate you kind of explaining, even in almost a visual way, although this is this is an auditory form of media. I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit, how often would you revisit this like Word document that you have? Was it a weekly thing, a monthly thing?
I would revisit it almost every day, actually, because I would add things to the to-do list. Like I had this like long, the Word document. I still have it, actually. I can't pull it up right now, but it extends pages, and it's really any time that I have a thought of, oh, I want to work on that, or, ooh, I need to do that. Even something very simple, I pop it on the to-do list. Right. Then about once a quarter, so every like 3 months, or after any big milestone, I recalibrate.
Okay.
I almost treat it like my finances, where like every quarter you like come back to it and you're like, where's my money going? What am I doing? Where am I spending money? Well, money is time and time is money. And so that's kind of how I treat time management as well.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's actually funny. We're kind of naturally flowing into techniques and strategies. And I have more questions about that, truthfully, but I want to circle back to what we were talking about in terms of like that transition period and times where, maybe the system that you had wasn't exactly fleshed out yet. Were there any points throughout your training where you felt completely overwhelmed?
Oh, so many.
Right.
So many.
Yes.
I can't even count it on one hand. There was tons of points.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing you can do, in something in hindsight, I'm really proud of myself for doing, probably only because of, my wife and her support network for me, was making those times of transition short and short-lived.
Mm,
Because if you let them kind of percolate and make things harder and then things start compounding, it's a lot harder to get back on your feet.
I see. So when you say making the transition period short-lived, how exactly did you go about doing that?
So let's take the transition. I'm trying to think. Try to think of a good example. Let's do the transition to med school. Like
Sure,
that
yeah.
that specific transition. So here you come from college. You're pre-med. You know how to navigate college. Anyone who's listening to this, they're going to get into med school. They're going to do great. They're pre-med. They know how to study for college courses, how to write, their essays for college courses, et cetera, and so forth. But then transition to med school, where, like we said earlier, drinking from this fire hose. And suddenly you can't just outwork the system. You have to work with the system, and you have to work and be comfortable with not knowing everything. And that was something that was hard for me. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
crap, I don't know everything. I don't know that answer. Then you freeze up. You're like, wait, do I not know this? Do I not know that? I need to keep studying all the time. And then you can see how that spirals. And I think we've all been in that place where that starts to spiral. When you're on clerkships and the attending's pimping you and you're like, I don't know. We all hate saying that. And I think the key thing is to catch it, be like, oh, wait, I don't know. So how can I prioritize what I'm working on right now to then tackle that? And so I think having someone that you can talk to be like, I really feel like I'm not, up to snuff. I don't quite know everything. And having a sounding board is how I got kind of through those things. So to summarize, having a sounding board, personal, virtual, doesn't matter. A sounding board to kind of convey your hesitations to is a really important part of those transition periods.
Got it. Okay. And now I also see how your wife plays into it too, because it sounds like she was someone who was your sounding board in a lot of ways. Okay. Got it. That makes sense. And I think something that you said that I think will resonate with a lot of people is realizing that being overwhelmed is not a sign that you're not prepared, and it's not a sign that you're not doing enough. It's just the nature of what you're going through. And it is a completely normal thing to have happen. I can tell you that I personally felt overwhelmed so many times. I'm a fourth year med student now. You would think that I wouldn't feel overwhelmed at this point. But unfortunately it happens, right? And I think there's something nice to be said about, I guess, making cognitive restructuring to feelings of anxiety and overwhelm, and I'm curious to see if you kind of agree where, like, if you're feeling overwhelmed by something, in a way it's good because you're not apathetic yet. You still care about it.
And I don't think I alluded to this explicitly, but the solution, at least for me personally, to being overwhelmed by information was to flip it and say, oh, heck yeah. I have no clue what I'm talking about. Let's learn it. And that was a really big thing. And maybe that's my inner scientist coming out and whatnot, but that worked really well during my grad school years, my PhD. It was like, oh, I have no clue what's going on. How about I figure out how to figure out what's going on? And how about I teach myself to figure out what's going on?
Yes.
And
yes. And I will tell you, listen, I am not a scientist. But I still feel like I eventually learned to do that. And I think it ended up making a huge difference for me as well. So it sounds like the two things that really helped you cope with when you were feeling overwhelmed is, one, having a sounding board, and two, kind of taking that cognitive restructuring of, maybe I don't know what's going on, but it is now my personal challenge to figure that out and kind of emerge on the other side victorious, having conquered whatever it is I wasn't able to do before.
Yes. And the kind of what I'll say about that final point is, it's almost like you gamify the system.
Yeah.
You're not I don't know if anyone in the audience is a video game guy. I was back in the day. Is you got to level up, and this is your opportunity to pursue some side quests. Maybe your side quest is complete this abstract, or your side quest is to, join the student group and become, one of the board members for it. Your quest is still the same: get into residency, become a great physician, become a great doctor, treat humans. But you have all these fun side quests along the way. And I think when you make that mental shift, particularly if you're able to early on in medical school, it just makes it fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in undergrad, Like, I
Yeah.
feel like there's so many, I feel like even in undergrad, the side quests are definitely more. Like, I think there's
Oh
so
yeah.
many more extracurriculars that people are doing and are expected to do. So I love that concept of a side quest.
Yeah.
Because I think it's super important. I wonder, kind of transitioning a little bit, did you feel like you had any role models or mentors who helped you understand how to manage your time effectively? Because it sounds like you developed amazing systems for organizing yourself and for coping. I wonder how much of that came from you versus came from people who've advised you.
I've had so many amazing mentors over the years. Even though it came after my first few years of med school, one of the best mentors, not one of the best mentor I've had in my life, academically has been my PhD advisor. And I spent 5 years with him, and it was a really formative 5 years of my life. And I still work with him to this day. I'm at a completely different institution, hundreds of miles away, and we still communicate on the regular, because he was that instrumental to how I think, how I process my time, how I approach problems. And he taught me a lot about time management, or at least reinforced a lot of what I thought about time management.
Yeah.
And some of the things I articulated earlier kind of get to what he basically instilled in me, which is this idea of you've got short, long, medium-term goals. You've got 24 hours in a day, and you have to prioritize a little bit of each of those.
Yes.
The other mentors I had were actually those above me in med school. The class above me, you start getting, part of student groups. You make friends. I encourage everyone to make friends with those above you, because they're going to say, like, hey, by the way, this doesn't really matter. Like, the administration really makes you think that this matters for whatnot or whatnot. Like, when it comes to the school, don't waste your time on that. Like, that helps with the prioritization. So I had a lot of mentors that helped in that regard. The specific techniques, I think, came from self-discovery and from, honestly, the internet and podcasts like this. Like, truly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more resources exist for free, the better, which is why I'm glad that this podcast exists. But yeah, I completely agree with the idea that mentors can come in all shapes and sizes and ages. Like, you can have people who are very far, they're advanced in their career, like your PI was, but you can also have people who are just a year or two above you who very clearly remember what they felt like when they were in your shoes and can kind of anticipate your needs and tell you what you need, what they wish they had heard when they were in that position.
And as being early on in residency right now, I am completely relying on those above me to really give me, like, concrete, like, is this a really big care or is this less of a care? Like, how much do I need to kind of devote to, how much of my time and resources should I devote to different?
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like prioritization of time and thinking about how you approach problems are things that you can seek guidance from your mentors and from your role models.
100%. And to be open about it. Like, ask them directly, like, do I need to care about this? Or like, what would you do in this situation? I think being candid with, once you identify a mentor, you establish a mentorship, be candid with them, because that's going to go a really long way to helping you get the best advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are going to be having several episodes in the future that also talk about mentorship as well. But it seems like sometimes mentors are people who are formally assigned to you, but then there are others that you kind of create with time, like someone who you admire, who you can just say, hey, I would love to meet with you to chat about whatever it is you want to chat about. And then you kind of continue to seek advice from that person.
100%.
Absolutely. So, okay. Let's transition a little bit. We've been talking a little bit already about techniques and strategies. And it sounds like, from what you described, that the Word document that you had was really a technique, a tool, a collection of your thoughts. It was kind of everything almost for helping you during medical school and during your path to medical school, I'm sure, of like balancing everything. Is there anything else that you think helped?
100%. So I think in a career like medicine, where, like we said earlier, you don't know what's going to happen on any given day. You really have one of the most unpredictable schedules, I would argue, of pretty much any profession, even when you're in training, is I actually like to take a toolbox approach, which is that you have this toolbox. It's full of all sorts of different tools. And at different points in your training, you're going to use different tools to get what you need to get done.
Okay.
So the overall blueprint is, well, to drop the name, but the overall blueprint.
Very nice, very nice. We did not ask you to do that.
But the overall blueprint truly is like, for me, it's like this Word document. Other people, it's their Google Calendar. Other people, it's like their mind map, whatever they might use, some app or some resource. That's your overall blueprint. But then you have this toolbox, which is, okay, I need to get to that point and conquer all of those things. And so I need to have little tricks and tips that I can use throughout the process to get there.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about some individual ones, or we can save that for later, but kind of let me know your thoughts.
Nah, man, the time is now. Please dig deep. Tell us anything you want us to know.
Totally. Yeah. I'm going to start off with kind of a little silly one, but actually one that is I'll call this the hammer in my toolbox. Because it just gets stuff done quickly. So there's something called what I learned this actually from one of my mentors, actually in grad school as well. I call it the 5-minute rule. I don't know if it has a different term, but if I can do something in 5 minutes, do it. And so what I mean by that is we get peppered with all this information many times a day, emails, texts, all that. Actually, I've honestly tailored it down to a 3-minute rule, whereas if I get an email that I can just tackle and get done and solve the issue within 3 minutes, I do it right then. I don't do anything else. I do it right then. If there's a task around the house, even if it's laundry or something like that, and I can do it in 3 minutes, even though all you want to do is go on YouTube and watch YouTube shorts or go on Instagram. No, 3 minutes, do it and be done. Because then it doesn't go on the to-do list. Then it's done, it's complete, and you can move on. And you have to expend no further mental energy on it. It's kind of like all those tech guys who wear this, tech guys, Bill Belichick, if you're into sports, who wear the same outfit like every single day, so they don't have to think about it. It's a little bit of that same mindset, which is like, I don't want to, I have a limited cognitive capacity. Let me apply it in a very strategic way. I don't want to be thinking about all my to-do list when I'm trying to focus on my UWorld questions or my lectures. So if I can do it in 5 minutes, get it done. There's a caveat to that, which is that if you responded to everything within 5 minutes all throughout the day, you never would get anything done out of what you actually needed to get done. So that's where you have to, the second part of the toolbox is you have a hammer, but you got a little bit of a lock on that hammer where you only use it during set times of the day.
Okay.
Like, don't have your email open all day. Like, instead, on your phone, I set it so it's every hour that I get, refresh my emails. It's not constant. Because it allows you then, I've got a dedicated hour of thinking, of working with no distractions.
That's really cool. Wait, how do you do that? How do you set your email so that it's only at every hour it'll refresh it for you?
I just did something when I first got my phone. Maybe it's just because I have a really old phone. But you just set it so that it doesn't refresh constantly. It only refreshes every hour or so. And if that doesn't work and you've got a new phone that refreshes constantly, I just put it away for an hour and then get my work done. And then I give myself 5 minutes to tackle everything that came in and then move on.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. And then you have again, I hope this doesn't fall flat on anyone who doesn't really work a lot with their, woodworking and whatnot. But
no, I feel like you could tell that I don't, because I'm really struggling with my hammer. But I'm with you. I'm with you.
Then you have your saw. Your saw is your prioritization. You got to cut out things. You have to focus on what really matters. Don't focus on the scrap wood, focus on the main wood. I think I'm taking this analogy probably a little too far.
No, I love it. Please keep going.
But no, that's a big part of it is like, you have to start to prioritize because we all have too much to do on every given day. And so prioritization, which I've said probably 10 times at this point, is one of the keys to successful time management.
Okay.
The third tool is your tape measure. And that is the hardest one because it's all about trying to identify how long you think something will take. And that's very, very hard to do. At least I find it very hard to do.
Me as well.
Always overestimate by 20%. That's just like a rule of thumb I've discovered. Like just overestimate by 20%, and typically you're actually going to be about right at that point.
Okay.
And it does two things. One, if you overestimate by 20%, you know that you gave yourself more than enough time, and so you better complete it by that timeline. So it puts a
Mm,
timeline on you. And then second, it doesn't make you feel bad when you don't quite finish it as soon as you thought.
yeah, I really like that. Okay, so far we've talked about the hammer, which is a 5-minute rule, the lock on that hammer. So having the 5-minute rule, but probably don't spend the entire day doing 5-minute tasks. Um, the saw, cutting things out, and then the tape measure, which is estimating how long, but overestimating by 20%. Is there anything else that you have in this toolbox?
I don't have a good tool actually for this one, but it truly is, and I think this gets the heart of everything. And if you're listening, you already have this tool because you are a pre-med or a med student. You have it. It's just cultivating it, and that's discipline. You have to keep to these things, and that is where things where you fall off is like sometimes discipline fades. I've gone through that. We talked about hardships earlier, like hundreds of times. I'm like, I
Yeah.
did not stick at all to what I planned to do today. Like crap. The key is that it's discipline, but it's discipline with grace. Meaning that if you don't, if you fall off the wagon, if you will, when it comes to your time management, you're the enemy of good. The enemy of good is perfect. I believe that's the phrase.
Yeah, perfect enemy of good. You got it.
Yeah. And so you're striking just to be good at time management. If you're perfect, then
Yes.
you're probably a robot. So I can't compete with that.
Right. It's not us versus AI yet.
Soon.
Yes.
I'm in radiology. I can say that.
Okay, maybe I'll follow up with you about that because I do have questions about that. Okay, so I'm trying to think, honestly, I'm trying to stall because I'm trying to think about a tool in your toolbox that would go with discipline with grace because I really do think it's important. The first thing that came to mind was like a chain, but chains don't exist in toolboxes, do they? That doesn't make sense.
Oh, no, I've got one. A clamp.
Okay.
Yeah, a clamp.
Yes.
A clamp
Tell us more.
and or actually a level. I've got it right here. A clamp is something that restricts two things together
Yeah.
in the pursuit of a goal, which is a specific cut or specific measurement or specific, glue them together. So actually a clamp, I
Yes.
think, is a good parallel because it is literally the structure that holds together all the pieces and parts of your project.
Okay. I like that. I really like that. So we have, and I've been typing this out to keep track for myself. The hammer, the 5-minute rule, the lock to make sure you're not doing it all the time. So you're not just like responding to emails all day. There is the saw to cut things out and prioritize. The tape measure to estimate how long and overestimate by like roughly 20% so that if it takes you that long, you're not feeling bad, but you're also holding yourself accountable. And then, which I think honestly, I'm going to steal that one. I'm going to steal all of these, but I feel like that one is the one that I needed to take like yesterday because in my fourth year, I feel like it's I'm in like a virtual elective right now and it's wonderful because I'm having time to pursue all of these other academic interests that I've been pushing aside and working on my research. But I am so bad at estimating how long it takes to do things. And I feel like I love this idea of 20%. And then the discipline with grace, which is the clamp, the structure that kind of holds things together. And I think, the clamp might be my favorite tool, not only because we came up with it together, but also because it's a medical tool too. So I feel like people who don't necessarily know what's in the toolbox, like me, will still know. Like, I feel like a lot of people in medicine know what a clamp is. So I love
Pass me
it.
the Kelly clamp.
Yeah,
surgery.
yeah, sure. I love it. Okay. So with all of this in mind, we talked a lot about prioritizing. So not to hit the hammer on the nail again, but I guess how do you go about prioritizing? Let's say like if everything felt urgent or important, because I feel like when I was in the beginning of med school, and I think you felt this way too, because we kind of talked about that idea of drinking from a water hose. It kind of feels like everything feels important. How did you go about figuring out what is actually important? What is, I know we talked about mentors, but was there anything else that you used to figure that out?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And it's not an easy thing to do. And you're not
Yeah.
going to get it right perfectly the first time or the second time, but you're going to get it better each time. And I
Yeah.
think, and I've not perfected it. Like I said, the goal of time management should never be perfection. It should be good.
Hmm.
I think the thing to do is to take a step. This is where you take a step back. And I'm going to use the toolbox analogy here again. You've got your
Let's do
blueprints.
it.
You're going to look at your blueprints and you're going to say, okay, this is the building I'm trying to construct. This is the project
Yes.
I'm working on. What is my end goal? Well, first of all, foremost, our end goal is to be the best, gosh darn doctors that we can be.
Right.
But in the interim, there are set criteria we need to hit along the way. Check boxes,
Okay.
if you will, to get there. Everyone has a circuitous route. There's no set way of doing that. It's a very personalized thing here. But what you have to do is you have to not focus on that next exam or the next exam.
Okay.
Like your first year med student, I remember I had biochem. I was a very traditional, back then they had a very traditional schedule. It was like biochem, all the physiology first year, all the pathology second year. What you had to do is step back and be like, okay, I have a cardio test in 2 weeks. Okay. But I need to, that cardio test is just one little part of my end goal, which is getting into residency, which I think is a valid, goal at this point.
Yeah.
And you have to say, well, what do I need for residency? Dealer's choice. For me, speaking from my own personal experience, I knew that basically my shtick, if you will, for residency, and because I'm also interested in it, is research.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I need to kind of do that that should always be a priority. It's more important to me than student interest groups. It's more important to me than, volunteering and all of that. Because it personally, to me, it means more. I love research. And so that's what I focused on from the beginning. So you have to take a step back and say, what am I interested in? What is going to be sort of the way that I get to my end goal? And most importantly, what is it I want to do? Because as a pre-med, you basically are told you need to check off boxes. You got to have your community service. You have to have your volunteer. You have to have your, good grades. You have to have your research. Residency is totally different. They want someone who's going to be a good colleague who cares deeply about what they're doing. If you care deeply about community service, awesome. Embrace it from day one and make it a priority. If you care deeply about research, embrace it from day one. Make it a priority.
Yeah.
So I think a big problem, I'm speaking a lot here, I know, but a big problem I see in, a big roadblock I see in a lot of the students I mentor is thinking that they need to do it all. No.
Yeah.
You don't need to do it all. Do what you truly do what you love, because that's what they're looking for in residency.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate that you've kind of delineated the difference between the expectations and the goals for pre-meds versus, I know there's no acronym, but we'll call them meds.
Yeah.
To make sure, and hopefully people who are listening at this point will understand that meds does not mean medications. We mean medical students. But regardless, I appreciate that you kind of delineated it, because I think something that is worth kind of talking about a little bit is that when you're a pre-med and you're trying to say oh, I want to be a doctor, you're trying to figure out what that means. So you do a little bit of everything, not to check off a box, but just to explore what it is you like and what your own superpowers are, what your strengths are. And then when you get to medical school, from what you've described, you were someone who probably did a little bit of everything in an undergrad and figured out, I really like research. And so you decided to take that from a strength to a super strength, right? A superpower almost. And so you made that a big priority as something that you kind of continued. And so I think it helps people understand that the way you're prioritizing from what you're describing is a little bit of everything to explore, with the purpose of exploration. And then when you get to medical school, still exploration, because you're not going to know exactly what you want to do. But there are things that you know about yourself that you should hold on to when you're in medical school, and you should continue to develop those strengths as you continue on. Does that sound right to you? Does that sound like an encapsulation of what you've kind of talked about?
That was a awesome summary. And I'm going to summarize it one more time in one line, which is basically med school is, it's about capitalizing, like finding your superpower. Med school is about finding your superpower. And it's okay if that takes you a little while. But like, just find it, because that's what's going to prevent you from getting burnt out. Is like, find what you care about. That's what med school is about. And then let that carry you forward, because then you want to prioritize. The prioritization is, what am I going to have the most fun doing today? And then your list is easy.
Yeah. No, I am so glad you talked about the superpower thing, because I actually said that to a group of, I was like helping one of my advisory deans. He had a panel for younger students, and I literally said that exact word, that like part of the clerk, I was talking about the clerkship year specifically, but I think it applies to med school broadly, is about finding your superpower. And I think for pre-meds, it's exploring what that could possibly look like, and kind of going to medical schools during interviews and stuff and being like, I have a couple of things that I really like. We'll see what happens. And then
it changes. It changes all the time.
It changes. Yes.
I came in, I was like, I'm going to do neurosurgery. I'm like, I've done all this neuroscience research. I'm doing neurosurgery. And then I got to like my neurology and neurosurgery rotations. I was like, nah, like, no, I'm not doing that.
I was a little curious about, because I remember when I was reading about you in your bio, like, oh, it was neurology to interventional radiology. And so I was curious what made that shift. And it kind of sounds like, not to deviate too much from the subject here, but it sounds like clerkships are kind of what did that for you.
No one should make any decision about what they want to go into until they've started their clerkships.
100%. Okay.
Yep.
Amazing. So let's talk a little bit about mindset. So you talked about how finding your superpower is important to prevent burnout. Is that something that you felt like happened for you? Like that was like research is something that fueled you a little bit as you kind of progressed through medical school?
Yeah, 100%. So like you will feel burnt out during med school. Everyone will. It's a very natural process. And I think it doesn't just apply to medicine. It applies to any career, any educational thing. Like it's part of life. One thing I always like to think about is that med school, just like everything else, is sinusoidal. You've got low periods, you've got high periods, you got low periods. Those low periods usually are times of burnout. And then you have to have some way of getting back to the high periods and then kind of come back down. Research and family, personally, was what sort of was like the line through that side. Like if I've got my sinusoidal graph, it's like the line straight through, it's the x-axis that kind of moves you and keeps you moving forward along your trajectory, even when other things are like, oh, that didn't go as planned. So so you need to find your superpower, but you also need to find, even Superman had a kryptonite. You need to find someone that's going to help treat that kryptonite, or like something.
His Lois Lane, or whatever. Yeah,
or something.
I think Superman has a dog too. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think the new Superman has Superman with the dog. So, or maybe, I don't know. I don't remember. But some support network, it seems, is important, or support thing, or even for some people, like an art form, even like a hobby that keeps them rejuvenated.
It gets you outside, gets you being creative, something that, they always make the joke, even though it's been debunked, of, you got your right brain and your left brain, you have your logical brain, and then you have your artistic brain. That's been debunked, but in general, find something that is in many ways antithetical to your studying all day brain, and that's usually creativity.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
Research for me was that creativity.
I think research is really creative, and I think people kind of undersell that. Like, research does seem technical in a lot of ways, but like to be able to come up with the whole protocol for something based on a question that you have, that involves a lot of creativity.
Yeah, it's like
a lot of innovation.
It's like making your own Lego set.
I love that. I guess one thing I want to ask you about, because you already kind of alluded to the fact that you've been burnt out before, how did you navigate that? And during that period of burnout, I guess, tell us again, as much detail as you feel comfortable with, but how did you kind of keep going when you were burnt out and stay, productive and continuing along your training?
Yeah. So as I kind of first of all, it's a really great question. And so I think it's a very intimate question for anyone listening. Everyone experiences things in different ways. So what I'm saying is purely just my own kind of thinking about this from a very conceptual standpoint, in retrospect in many ways, is that we have that sinusoidal curve of life, if you will, in studies, particularly during medical school, where it's like, I did great on exam, I did terrible on exam. Oh, now I'm kind of like, I feel terrible, I'm kind of burnt out. And like, I just don't have the motivation. All I want to do, I actually learned this from a a med student today. I'm citing my age here, but someone said something about like couch rot, like where you like sit
Sure.
on your phone and you like just watch your phone all day and like, and they're like, that's all I want to do. I'm like, maybe I'm gonna like, and it's like, yeah, that's a little bit of a sign of burnout that you're kind of like seeking other dopamine hits, if you will. But I think the best thing to do is remember that perfect is the enemy of good, and time management is the goal is good. So if you just get one task done, okay, it's a little bit of the one foot in front of the other, which is not
Yeah.
meant at all to take away from the burden that kind of these situations can put people in. But for
Hmm.
me personally, it was just being like, the last thing I want to do is this one thing, but it's number one on my priority list for my daily to-do list. Let's pull up the Word document. I'm going to do that. Okay,
Yeah.
let's do another one. Okay, another one. You're like kind of digging yourself a little bit out of a ditch. And I think it goes a really long way towards eventually getting you back to where you need to be.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think the one foot in front of the other is an excellent way to approach it because I feel like in terms of burnout, from what I've experienced and from what I've heard, I think the only way out is really through and being able to kind of figure out ways to recover. So I guess kind of building on that idea, did you do anything specific that helped you recover?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we actually haven't talked about the third part of my time prioritization, or the fourth part actually, which is life outside of medicine.
Yes. Yes.
And I'll take earlier on in my medical career, before wife and kids and all of that, is for me, it's finding that outlet that you mentioned earlier. Is
Mm-hmm.
part of your to do list is to, for me, was get outside, like literally written on my Word document, like go outside.
Okay.
So I'd be like, okay, I don't want to study, like I will go outside, and then you go outside and you're like, oh, hey, look at this, I found a new like hiking trail, cool, okay, let's go explore that. And the next thing you know, you've totally used the rest of your day exploring that, but in that time you've kind of rejuvenated a little bit.
Yeah.
You've gotten out of the place that you're studying all day. I think something I tell all of my students: when you're navigating burnout, change environment.
Mm.
Get out of your apartment, get out of the school library, do something that moves you to a new location, and prioritize something completely different on your to-do list for time
Yeah.
prioritization. Prioritize something outside of medicine, outside of work.
Hmm. I like that. So there's sort of two, it's like a two-part recipe almost. So, getting one foot in front of the other, doing one task at a time, maybe starting with the low-hanging fruit first, sending the email you don't want to send, whatever it might be, but also having this recovery kind of mindset and doing things that, fill your cup outside of medicine.
Yeah, yeah. Like the again, if you haven't discovered it by now, I'm a person who loves analogies, and my analogy is
I
that
love it. I'm
yeah,
obsessed with it. I
we're
really am. This is so iconic.
we're athletes. We're just really stationary athletes in
Yeah.
medicine. um, and
Don't
they
tell
always
the
say,
orthopedic surgeons you said that.
well, yeah, it's like you don't train for a marathon every single day. You got to actually
Right,
like
right.
like you got to take rest days. And here, you don't study every single day. All this time for like prioritization and time management. No, like you need to prioritize your recovery days. They're just as important as your, you know, exertion days. And so you
Yes.
have to prioritize that. And I think it's really easy to fall in the trap where those get left to the side, which also actually scientifically has been shown that also happens to athletes.
It's good to know. I didn't know that happened to athletes. But it makes sense. Like, I feel like medical school and athletic training, sort of similar to the analogy that you said, there are intense periods of time where you're kind of just building like muscles, or for us, it's skill sets, and just using them over and over and over again. And I feel like when you're like, I really am about to expose how little I know about sports, but when you are throwing a ball in whatever sport, there's like a skill set that's kind of associated with that, with your aim, with how hard you're going to throw it, all of that. And the best way to get good at it is to get your reps in. And I think a big thing of medicine is just getting your reps in, whether it's practice problems, whether it's flashcards, whether it's actual patients. And when you start seeing patients. And so I think there's a lot of parallels there that I don't think it could be said enough.
100%. I totally agree.
Yeah. So I guess for you, and we talked about like 1 foot at a time, and it sounds like that required a lot of motivation from you. Where did that motivation kind of come from?
For me, it wasn't motivation. Like when you're in kind of the depths of burnout, it's not motivation. It's just,
yeah,
okay, I've like, maybe it's motivation in some way, shape or form, but it's more like a duty is, you don't know at that point necessarily what your end goal is. And you have some idealistic, vision of where you're going to be. For me, it's like, I'm going to get into residency of one of the hardest specialties. Sure. Okay, fine. Like I'm completely burnt out. Last thing I want to do is study. I don't feel like I'm doing well. And then you take a step back and you're like, okay, well, let's compartmentalize. And let's just say, I can't do anything about that right now. But what I can do something about is, sending that email.
Yeah.
Doing the laundry. Maybe cleaning the kitchen. Like, it's, find that one thing that you're like, this is the thing that I am most willing to do out of all the things I don't want to do. And then you kind of claw your way back out of that. And eventually, and again, if you need help as well, seek that through, resources. But like in a very conceptual sense, that kind of gets you up every ring of the ladder all the way back to the roof where you were working before.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for outlining that. I will say the only thing I will argue with you about is that I do think it is motivation, what you've described. And the reason for that is because I think that at any moment, I think this is something that med students forget all the time, and undergrad students forget all the time. But people can drop out whenever they want, but you choose not to. And that is a factor of motivation. And for you, it sounds like it's this sense of duty, and it's the sense of, I want to be a doctor. I want to accomplish my goal. That in itself is a motivation. And for you, it sounds like it's so intrinsically a part of you that like, you don't even see it that way, Touche.
Yeah, no. You can convince me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like for people who are listening to this, like, even if you feel like you're burnt out right now, the fact that you've made it to this point in this podcast means that you are a highly, highly motivated person. And just because you're not able to do as much as what you imagine a highly motivated person is doing doesn't mean that your motivation is gone. Because burnout and motivation, I think, are different. They're different, the concepts.
Totally. And for anyone who's listening, again, as with everything in life, apply the 120% rule that I mentioned earlier. Is whatever you think that other people are doing, like they're not. That doesn't quite apply there. But like basically, like whatever you think you're able to do, like say that's 120% and then knock yourself down to 100%. So it's almost like an 80% or not. It's like the inverse of the 120% rule, which is like estimate what you're able to do and then say, okay, I'm not going to actually be able to do all that. That's another really important part of this will be the chisel in the toolbox.
Okay. All right. Adding another tool to the toolbox. Love it.
Yeah. Which is basically like whatever you think you're going to do during the day. I still fall into this all the time. I fall into this probably once a week, which is, I want to do all of these things this weekend on my weekend off. Am I actually going to get all those things done? No. There's
I
not
do that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So cut it down 80% or even cut it down 70%. That is what you're going to actually do. And then when you reach that 70%, you're like, I did everything I planned. And that helps motivation and that helps prevent burnout.
So just to clarify, are you cutting it down to 80% or 70%, or are you cutting 80%?
Cutting it down. So like if I say, I can even use this on weekend, for example, is we're expecting a new baby any day now, and
Oh,
I'm like, oh, thank
congratulations.
you.
That's so exciting.
And I'm like, I need to do so much before then. Like maybe I'm
Yeah, it makes
nesting.
sense.
Maybe I'm nesting. I'm not quite sure. Like there's so many projects around the house. And, earlier today, actually, before this meeting, I sat myself down during lunch and I was like, here's my to-do list. Let's cut out. I had 20 things and I cut out 5 things. I said, those are not on the to-do list because
Yes.
this is what I'm going to get done.
Yeah.
So aspirational versus reality.
Right. No, that makes sense. There was a quote that a fourth year student had said when I was in an interview applying for a position, and he had said, "My eyes are bigger than my stomach."
Yes.
And I think that applies to a lot of us, because a lot of us, like I said, highly motivated, wanting to do a lot of things. Sometimes you kind of bite off more than you could chew when you make your to-do list. And so I appreciate the addition. I think the chisel to the toolbox is it's a due addition. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to what we were talking about when we were talking about like motivation and burnout. The last thing that I kind of wanted to touch in there is you alluded to it a little bit when you were talking about how interventional radiology is one of the more competitive specialties to match into. But you did it. Congrats.
Thank you.
But it sounds like there was a lot of pressure associated with that.
Yeah, but as with all things that are pressure, 90% of that pressure is self-imposed pressure.
Yeah.
Even if it's extrinsic pressure, I have colleagues who like their parents really want them to become cardiologists or something. I'm lucky I come from a family with no doctors, so they have no clue even what interventional radiology is.
Me as well, yeah.
But even if it's external pressure, it's still internal pressure that is kind of the guiding force here. And so it's recognizing that it's internal pressure and that no one will judge you differently depending on whatever your path takes you. And so I think it's more of like realizing that it's you pressuring yourself to like try to get into be a neurosurgeon. Like you have to ask yourself, why? Why do I want to do that? Do I want to do it for the prestige? Okay, that's a thing, fine. Do I want to do it? Like I'd maybe argue against that, but if that's your thing, sure. If you want to do it because you find it awesome, heck yeah. And then if you want to do it because you think it's a good lifestyle, okay, if that's floats are fancy, great, do that too. But the big thing is that you need to recognize that the pressure to get into a certain specialty is 99% internal.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. It does. It does make sense. Like I think by realizing that the pressure that you're experiencing is pressure that's internal, it in a way releases it a little bit. Because it kind of helps you understand, like sort of when you were talking about whether or not something is important, 90% of that pressure, the fact that it's self-imposed means you can remove it, or at least parts of it, anytime you like.
Yep. The only person judging yourself is you.
Yeah. No, that is that's real. That's real. I guess in that same vein.
Yeah.
If like let's take that remaining 10%, or even let's take that 90%, and people say like, okay, fine, I get it, 90% of it's self-imposed. I still want to have, there's still some things that they care about. Like let's say, for example, if there's choosing residency and they either care about like the specialty, or they care about the prestige of the institution that they go to, or whatever it is that is important to them. How if you felt any of that, how did you handle that while maintaining like personal time and maintaining the things that are not within your goal? Like, for example, because we kind of talked about how you were interested, like your primary goal for a long time was residency, and then outside of that was research, but you also had your family and like your budding family for some time. How did you balance both of those things?
Yeah, that's again a totally individual and personal question, but for me, frankly, the biggest determinator of where I did my away rotations and where in my ranking list, was not medicine related. That played a role.
Okay.
But and even in my letter to the program director, when I said, hey, I want to go here, one of the primary reasons was family. It was part of like residency's hard. I knew it. I knew I was going to be here for a long time. I wanted to be somewhat close to my support network, as close as we could be. And the priority really became my family at that point, my kind of budding family.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate you being honest about that.
Like I actually looked like I remember I won't say any names of anything, but I remember I was interviewing another program. It's like one of my questions during interviews was like, "Hey, anyone have kids?" At this point, I had 2 kids, and I knew knew I had another on the way, and they were like, "Oh yeah. One of our attendees has a kid," and I was like, "Okay, you're not the program for me." Like, so you have to, again, it all comes back to prioritization. Figure out what it is that you want and go for it. That said, my decision to kind of rank programs the way I did also had an aspect of prestige, had research. Prestige was actually
Totally.
lower than I initially thought it would be. It really was research, like family, research, clinical training. Like, am I going to be a good clinician coming out of here? And then so on and so
Absolutely.
forth.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think I appreciate your honesty about that. Let's
Yeah,
let's
don't tell my
transition a
program.
little
I'm
bit.
kidding.
No, I mean,
I'm already in. It's okay.
yeah. No, but I think it's helpful to know, like, whatever your priorities are, that's what you should hold on to
Yeah.
and, like, be mindful of that. We already started talking about, like, making time for the things that are outside of medical school. Did you, while you were, again, you were wearing so many hats throughout all of your training, I'm sure, but did you make time for, like, the hobbies you had? I know you mentioned that you went on hikes and stuff. Did you still, like, continue to do that throughout medical school?
Yeah, 100%. Uh, this probably only makes context once I say and remind that I grew up in Alaska, so outdoors
Yes.
is very important to me. So I actually would go fishing probably twice to 3 times a week at work in the evenings. I luckily lived right near kind of to a body of water that I could fish in. So I prioritized that. That was my mental health break at the end of the day. Um,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, it's also where I studied for step one. I just sat outside in the middle of the woods with first aid. Um,
Are you serious?
I'm not
That's
kidding.
so sick. That is so sick. Wow.
Yeah, I got
Okay.
tendonitis from elbow or tennis elbow from holding that big old book the entire time.
Oh my God.
Uh, but yeah, no, so I did. Short answer is yeah, 100%. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be a lot. Once kids came along, that was my new hobby.
You made yourself hobbies.
Yeah. And I say that
That's amazing.
the reason I bring up the family part and kids so much for anyone who's listening
Please
is
do. Please do.
the reason I bring it up is I think there's actually a lot of folks out there, particularly in national medical schools and maybe someone who took more circuitous routes in their medical education that do have kids. And I personally had no role models when it came to having kids in med school and
Yeah.
beyond and in residency. And so, like, it's a hard, but like, it's really important that you know that other folks do it and you can't do it. That's my little shtick on that.
No, I mean, I think something else is that there are probably a lot of people, and I'll confess, even myself, who they come across that question a lot. Like when you're in medical school, a lot of times you're like, even if you go through the most straightforward path, which is like one of those 7-year combined programs, no gap year, and then you go straight to residency, you still are in your 20s and late 20s. A lot of times where your peers are getting married, having children, or like people you grew up with are doing those things. And so that question comes up. And so I personally appreciate that you're bringing it up because I feel like it's helpful for people who are on the fence about it to hear that, okay, you can have it all almost, which is go to a competitive residency, be able to balance research and still have a family.
The best piece of advice I got on that, I don't want to get us too off topic, but it was from my advisor, my mentor, for my PI in grad school. When I told him, I was like, man, I'm so overwhelmed, like, but I also want to start a family. And I remember him telling me, there's no good time to have kids. There's no good time to get married. Just do it, wing it, see what happens.
That's what I've been told too, truthfully.
Like,
That's kind of the advice that I've gotten as well. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I think another thing that I want to ask you, and again, this is probably going to be another. I told you before we recorded that this is going to be a personal episode, so I'm living up to the promise. Is there anything that you wish you had prioritized more outside of academics? Looking back,
that's a very good question. Give me a second just to think on it. Yeah. And I say, yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel this honestly every day is I wish I prioritized more life outside of medicine, not in like party it up and go out and all that, but like I still like during M3, like I didn't get to see my new daughter a lot because basically I stayed at the hospital from sundown till sun up so that I could study and do well on shelves and whatnot and work in telehealth. That's also what you sign up for though. So that's why I don't necessarily say I would do it differently because it got me to where I am. But I think it's also like it's really hard
Yeah.
um to balance those two. Like I wish I'd, parents get older, grandparents get older. I wish I prioritized, spending more time with a lot of those folks. But at the same time, I think it's just I think something that a lot of folks in their mid 20s, early 30s, that as I say, I sound like an old man here, but back in my day, no, but like you realize like these are the times that you're supposed to be exhausted and feel like you're not going to be able to do it all. Like that's generational. That's always how it is.
Yeah.
Um, and it's okay that you missed, your cousin's wedding or, you didn't get to see your, grandparents for that particular time or your parents. Um, so like I regret it, but at the same time, I wouldn't do it differently because I know what I did got me to where I am.
Mm.
So it's like a balance between, this gets back to time management, prioritization. The most important thing is that long-term goal.
Yeah.
And that's why it's the first thing I do every morning. And so even though you do have to make sacrifices to get there, you don't want to sacrifice everything. And I probably wouldn't do it any differently, but there are times where I'm like, man, I wish I had spent more time, when my daughter was 2 at home, getting to see her, grow up. But that's kind of how
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I think
I
everyone would
think
say that too.
I think so. I think everybody has some shape or form of spending more time with certain people in my life. And I do think that thinking back and thinking on your response, I do think this is kind of me thinking out loud at this point, but I think we should probably have another episode about like parenthood and navigating parenthood at various stages in residency because it goes hand in hand with time management in a lot of ways, but there are different things about it because also like not to say the elephant in the room, but like you have a family that is taking care of your children while you're in the hospital and like other
Hmm.
people may not have that circumstance and like you weren't pregnant when you were raising your children. And so
Yep.
so I think, this is something to flesh out more. And if anybody who's listening has interest in hearing more about it, like let us know and we'll find someone to talk about it, to talk about every aspect of it.
I think 100%. I think the most important thing would be, a mom and the dad,
Yeah.
because I see my colleagues, who are very pregnant on the wards. We're lucky to be at an institution that provides really generous maternity leave and paternity leave, but still, it's like I, I could not have done what I did without the help of my in-laws and, my wife who also works, full time. But, yeah, so again, it gets back to support network is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So let's transition to our final segment now, which is about advice for current and future students, which is so funny as a segment because I'm kind of like, that's what this entire episode is. But
Well, no, this entire episode is more just like a whole bunch of thoughts in a row.
right. A word vomit about the toolbox that is time management. Although we'll be doing a takeaway soon and I will hash out every single tool because I do love that. And if there's a
Perfect.
way, I know we can't really patent a conversation, but like I would patent that because I think it's brilliant. That's amazing. But I guess if you were to take one piece of advice that you want to give, I know you've had extensive experience mentoring students, so definitely share if there's one piece of advice that you constantly give people. But to someone who is struggling to balance studies and personal life, if they are new, and I think my initial question was about to a new med student, but I think it kind of can apply to anybody who's new at something, whether it's new to undergrad, new to like preclinical, clinical, or residency or whatever. But anyone who's new that's struggling, that adjustment of balancing what they're doing with their personal life.
Yeah, yeah. Let me sit on that real quick because there's so many options.
I know I also asked you like a super long question.
sort of hits on a couple of things we talked about. I think the biggest thing is take what you want to do, whatever timeline it is. Take what you want to do. If it's today, if it's in the next week, if it's in the next month, if it's in the next year, if it's the next 10 years. Whatever you want to do, write it out. And then cross out 20% of it, because you're only going to get 80% of it done. And I mean that truly, and it relaxes you. You're like, oh, I don't have to do it all.
Right.
So if you've got 10 things that you want to do today, okay, write 1 through 10, knock them out. Oh, you get to 8, you're kind of knackered, you're tired, stop. You feel good? Keep going. Like, you can always add more to it. But I really, actually, after talking out loud with you for a little bit, like I said, you need a sounding board to figure this stuff out. And right now, I like this podcast because you've kind of been a sounding board for me to think retrospectively about a lot of this stuff.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah, is like, yeah, cut out 20% of what you think you're capable of doing, because we're all capable of anything, but you can't be capable of everything every day. And so cut out 20% and just knock out the rest of it. And then the rest of the time is now kind of for family and friends. And then to piggyback off that, the other thing is for me, and if you're an early med student, try this out, is treat med school like a job. A really low paying, arguably negatively paying job.
Negative, I was going to say, yeah.
Like, and just, you could study 24 hours a day for 10 years and you still won't know it all.
Yeah.
Instead, treat it like a job. And when that job is done, you're done. Go home, have a tall glass of water and, get your exercise in and call it a day.
Yeah. You clock in, you clock out. In a way.
Which is antithetical to like 99% of us who are in med school. But you have to shift that mentality to, it is a job, very first low paying job, but you clock in, you clock out. And when you clock out, you're done as much as you're able to.
Right. It's interesting because like I've heard so much, and I'm curious to see if you feel the same way, is that residency feels a lot better than medical school. Oh. And a lot of people have kind of said that residency feels a lot better because they feel like they're just doing their job and they're focusing on being good at their job, and they're not kind of focusing on everything else that's associated with like climbing the ladder, trying to impress people, getting letters of rec, all of that stuff. And I think obviously, everyone in residency is a different, circumstances. If you're trying to go for fellowship or whatever, like it isn't always there, but it's definitely less in residency than it was in medical school. I'm curious now that you're talking about it, because you in a way are also my sounding board. I'm wondering if it's because you literally clock in and clock out of residency versus in medical school, that structure isn't there for you. Does that sound like right to you? Like
50% right. Yeah. Cause you do clock in and clock out.
What am I missing?
The biggest thing, honestly, for residency for me is like, particularly as someone, I don't have a fellowship. I'm in the integrated track. There is no more fellowship.
Got it.
It's a straight through and then I'm attending. Like, you never stop wanting to impress someone. But in med school, there's an undercurrent of like, crap, I have to impress people. I need that letter of rec. I need this. Like, and that sometimes gets in the way of learning, I've seen in a lot of my students. Mm-hmm. They're so focused on performing that they get rid of learning. And something that I've already enjoyed about residency is that I've been able to flip that. And I'm here to learn, to be the best dang doctor I possibly can be. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm going to do a good job, but I'm not there to try to impress someone. I'm there to learn. And I'm there to be good and to do good. And if I impress them along the way, great. But like the long-term goal that I mentioned throughout this entire podcast, that now shifts really to, I don't want to just get in somewhere. It shifts to, I want to be the best doctor I can possibly be. Yeah. And that's a cool shift. And I think that's why residency is so much more pleasant, because frankly, it's way the heck more pleasant than med school. Right. Maybe it's just the specialty I'm in, but it's really, really pleasant because you're A, doing something that you know you like, B, no longer feel that innate desire. I am so low on the totem pole that like The big thing I did today was get a fax from the outpatient hospital and like get that information to add to rounds. Like, yeah, like that was always like a med student thing at the hospital I was at because it was like a rural community hospital. And then instead, it's focusing on just learning.
Yeah. Thank
Does
you
that make
for
sense?
clarifying. It does. And I appreciate you correcting me because I feel like I am only saying what I have heard from the grapevine. I've never experienced residency myself. And so
It's awesome.
I mean, hopefully I will, hopefully in a year from now, I'll be like in it. But I appreciate you clarifying that because I think it provides some more insight. So again, final questions, I promise. If a student could only adopt one time management habit that would make the biggest impact, what should it be? And I think I have a feeling of what you're going to say, but I'm curious about what would be the one thing you think people should take?
It sounds silly, but it makes the world of difference. It's the 5-minute rule.
Love it.
It's huge. Like I cannot tell you how much of a difference. And I think there's actually a book written on it because the person who taught me it mentioned a book about like the 5-minute rule for getting tasks done. But it gets rid of all of the noise so that when you're working on what you want to work on, that's all you're working on. So dedicated time to do stuff. But if you see something you can knock out quick, just do it.
I'm looking it up. There is a book. The one that I'm seeing on Google is written by Rory J. Uplanelp.
Yeah. Uplanelp. Yeah, I don't know quite. Yeah.
Yeah. But
yeah, the 5-minute rule to greatness. No, this is exactly the book, the 5-minute rule technique. Tell yourself you'll only work on a task for a brief 5-minute period. Set a time. Well, they're a little bit more vigorous about it than I am. Set a timer for 5 minutes, do it, and then when it goes off, then you're done.
Sure. Okay. There you have it. I also looked up something earlier. There are 1,440 minutes in a day. If I remember that correctly. So it sounds like for you, if there are 5 of those 1,440 that people could take, then to do a task and just get it out of the way, that should be it. And that's a good takeaway. Okay, good to know. Are there any misconceptions about med school workload and personal life balance that you would like to take this forum here and now to clear up?
Yes. I'm going to, again, come at it from the perspective of dad and family. I know I've harped on that, but it's a very big part of my persona right now.
No, as it should be.
Is that you can do all of that. I know, like, I don't like male, female, like, or no matter what, you can do it. One of my colleagues in med school was a single mom of 2 kids at that point and crushed it. And she did it through really good time management.
Yeah.
And so like, just if you're able to prioritize, then you can, but I'm always against slowing down life for like medicine to an aggressive degree. Like it's okay to like, it delays it a little bit, of course. Our careers are here to allow us to give back to humanity, but at the same time, we cannot let it take the humanity from us. And so, there's never a good time to, start that startup, to, have the family, or to, hike Mount Kilimanjaro, whatever it is, like whatever your passion is, that should go on that to-do list. That should go on that Word document. And that should not be at the bottom of it. It should be near the top. And having that goal there then says, I'm going to work towards that. For me,
that makes sense.
Residency, family. Like those are the 2 things at the top of my to-do list, for my long-term goals throughout all of med school. And I encourage those that are listening to find your own goals to put at the top of that to-do list, because that's what motivates you every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Almost like a reason to get up every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Looking back, it sounds like I think you know what, I'm not even going to bother asking you because I know the answer, because you've already described it, but it's just, and correct me if I'm wrong, the strategies or habits that you still use today that you developed. And to me, it sounds like the Word document is something you use all the time, the tools in that toolbox that we talked about. And this is a really great way to do the recap, but, the hammer, which is our 5-minute rule, which we now found out is in a book, by Mr. umlaut, if I'm remembering correctly, and the lock to make sure you're doing it enough. So like not doing the 5-minute rule every single minute of the day. So out of that 1,440 minutes in a day, you're not spending all of them or a significant number of them using this 5-minute rule. But the saw to help cut things out, the tape measure to estimate how long something's going to take, but overestimate by 20% and kind of operate and schedule based on that overestimated number. The clamp that kind of allows you to hold things together, but also allows you to loosen up the grip a little bit as and when you need to. And then our final addition, which was the chisel, which is the way to kind of, if you're looking at a to-do list for the day, cutting it down to 70 to 80% and being proud of what that 70 to 80% was, so that you can take the rest of your time and just like be with your family, be with your loved ones, do the things that fill your cup outside of medicine. Is there anything else, Camden, that you feel like was a takeaway for you from this episode?
You just summarized things wonderfully.
Thank you.
No, like truly, that was really great. The only other takeaway is, like I said earlier, it's really fun having a sounding board. It's been a long time since I've thought about, you apply them every day, but actually thinking like conceptually about some of these things that you use the other takeaway I have is having a sounding board.
Yeah.
Is like, and that sounding board can be, a hiking trail, it can be water, it can be whatever. It can be, a loved one or a friend or a sibling, but having a
podcast co-host, who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Having a soundboard, I think is really helpful, because everything we talked about today is very malleable and it will change day to day. Try not to let it change minute to minute. But it's a dynamic process. And so you want to be able to adapt and pull out the different tools we need to use it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for joining us. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. We have several episodes planned out, including episodes about interviews, including episodes about the mental and emotional side of pursuing a career in medicine. I think what I want all of my listeners and for all of you to kind of take away is that we're all in this together, and the feelings that you feel, whether it be burnout, whether it be overwhelm, whether it be anxiety of what's to come ahead, it is something that we've all experienced. And having a network, having people, and having resources like this to lean on is kind of what it's all about. So thank you all for listening to Pursuit of Practice, brought to you by Blueprint. And thank you again, Camden, for being an amazing, amazing guest today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. See you guys next time.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe on YouTube or follow Pursuit of Practice on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an update. And remember, Blueprint is here to support you every step of the way, whether you're preparing for the MCAT or navigating med school applications and beyond. Visit blueprintprep.com for more details. See you next time.